So I made a video showing the admin abuse going on in Northwind by a rogue admin, or so I thought, but as this video gets more views, something I never thought would happen, yeah, it happened. I got a direct message from the admin in the video with some claims and an incredible statement at the end that even less expecting than an admin response in the first place, and you just don't want to miss it. So their first claim is that they have a problem with our description box and how we didn't need to go against other staff members and higher-ups, likely referring to my previous video's description box where I said, "A rogue admin threatens me with ban for housing violations. I systematically tear down his violations." Though he might not be rogue, and Northwind might actually want to false ban, so who knows. We know he said, and I quote, "You're just asking for a ban," so the threat was clearly real. We also systematically tore down the accusations that he put against us, so by process of elimination, the statement that the admin might not be rogue after is the only thing left. He says this message targets the staff members / higher-ups that weren't involved at all. Now, if you can read English, you know the word might means a probability, not an accusation, so it doesn't mean that it happened, it just means that there's a probability it happened. Given that he was not acting on behalf of Northwind makes him rogue, or in scenario 2, he is acting on behalf of Northwind, making him not rogue, as I expressed in the description. So all of this description is true. He also states we went to one of his random, air quotes, YouTube videos and tried to pick a fight with him. The video he's referring is titled Northwind's Most Hated One-Trick Tanagashima User. The title implies the hate he gets is from the Tanagashima gun, at which point I explained in a comment, it's likely not because of the gun, but the rampant admin abuse that he earns so much hate. Given he chose to imply this with his title, I have no problem pointing out the implied false advertising. Kinda makes no sense that you put most hated and one-trick Tanagashima user in a sentence and not be trying to imply that it's because of that for a title of a video. So I don't see his problem there. So now we're going to get into the claims he actually makes about the actual video in question. He says we don't show the inside of the house in question, which is true to my knowledge, but simply put, we don't randomly just decide to do a house tour for no reason. We're not a roleplay YouTuber, and when administrative members tell you rebuild the house, the old house is rebuilt and no longer exists. Given I did no house tours, I only have retroactive footage. So while in theory I could have shown like 2 corners of the house on the way walking outside of the house, it's just not constituting a full house tour anyways. So simply put, we can't just hop online and show a house that doesn't exist. So I find this claim is at best ignorant, given his own orders resulted in the lack of the house to show in the first place. His next claim was that it didn't seem like a warehouse, with a bed lying out in the middle. Allegedly, it was not in the middle. However, both beds were located against the wall, as you would expect most beds in real life to be. My best guess is that he means that the beds were not enclosed in a separate room, given the warehouse aesthetic. It would make less sense to have a specific bedroom when the warehouse is only 3 rooms big in the first place. The other claim is that because there are other beds for friends, now it's illegal. The only rule about beds other than your own that doesn't apply already to beds of your own that we addressed in our previous video is in the 4th party housing regulations that you can still only reach through a 3rd party website as the time of doing this, and it also requires a phone number to even access in the first place. It states, this includes larger homes used by factions for respawns. Not to mention, the developers themselves clearly find it's not only acceptable to have party members with beds in your houses. You may ask, why do I think this? To which I respond, they actively went out of their way to implement a mechanic allowing for party members to place beds in other party members' houses. The developers, who coded the game, implemented this feature themselves that has no other function but to allow party members to add beds. Immediately, we also notice this is not even an additional rule. It's a stipulation for the previous rule we already covered in our first video. If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend going and checking it out, because it makes a lot more sense if you have the context, but if not, you can go watch it later. It only applies to homes in which the sole purpose in the first place is being used as a respawn anchor. If you search the word soul in a dictionary and add purpose, you'll find it means the one and only purpose. Given the mine entrance right next to the house, the fire room, the showroom, the workstation, along with many other storage containers and warehouse aesthetic features found throughout the house, any well-meaning moderator wouldn't really make this mistake saying that the extra bed, because it's the faction members in a faction I'm not even in, it doesn't make any sense why it would specify that. His next claim is that we didn't have enough storage in our warehouse. Again, this is why I bring up the SLC example. Many SLC houses that have less also appear to have a warehouse aesthetic. You know, it's not being implemented perfectly. He then states that James Bay warehouse didn't have any beds either. Even within a roleplay context that these people clearly care about, makes no sense. These admins know that you cannot have multiple houses in Northwind, thus eliminating the possibility of a second house for a bed. You just can't have them both. And he also specifies that it had an NPC. So far, we've established that the warehouses can exist, meaning for roleplay purposes, things do need to be stored. Then why doesn't that logic apply to beds? It applies to everything else. But the second it comes to beds, every other good in the game, it's fine. Beds? No. Those can't be stored. He also adds that we should have an NPC managing our warehouse, but last I checked, you are violating Northwind rules if you force people to labor for you with no pay forever, not to mention that they have no home and are not allowed to even sleep in the warehouse, according to this admin, which again makes no sense roleplay-wide. His next claim is a problem he has with the attic. Put simply, he complains that it's pretty empty, which it was. The idea this isn't roleplay oriented comes from a house with no attic. The top results of a quick internet search for an attic in images reveals what attics actually look like. Here's some not so copyrighted recreation footage for the attic pictures. I mean, it's copyrighted, it's just copyrighted by me now, so I can show it. Yeah, it's not exactly filled to the brim with props, is it? If you don't trust me, just go look it up yourself. Another issue he has is when we stated we didn't use the house for combat. First, we have to define using it for combat. I did not use it for combat, but of course you can define combat as anything. So given a house is not a weapon and it has no mounted weapons, we can immediately rule out the literal definition, but if we extrapolate this a little further, as I suspect the rules intend, using the house for cover or other defensive purposes in combat, which, again, we have not done unless we were attacked while within the house. The Northwind rules state that you can defend your house from within if you get attacked within the house. Also note that there's no admin discretion required for this rule, at all. It says you can defend. That is an admin speaking. I suspect that what he means is respawning in the house, leaving the premises, then only hundreds of seconds after engaging in combat, which, as we discussed, combat is still not prohibited in Northwind after using the respawn mechanic of a house. Claims that because it is done in relative succession, this is probably per his admin discretion, because I don't think he understands how infrequent these respawns are, because he's probably only seen it from edited YouTube videos that specifically choose to edit out the waiting. It's a problem. This claim kind of falls apart upon further inspection. The developers only added a 60-second respawn cooldown. Not only was respawning cooldown on their mind in the coding of the game, but they also deemed 60 seconds a sufficient cooldown, and at any time could have changed that number to whatever they thought was reasonable. The most generous benefit of the doubt we can give him is the house is used in combat logistics, which is like walking to the combat. That's the same logic as calling my lantern an assault lantern, or calling James Bay an assault staging ground. And thus that we have used it with this logic to respawn, it's a respawn anchor. But that means its sole purpose is for respawning, which its sole purpose is not for respawning, as we stated before. There's public footage of me using my house for roleplay purposes. If I sound like a video on repeat, that's because he keeps making the same claims that we already debunked a few times. Now, his next claim is that because the St. Lawrence Company, otherwise known as the SLC, is an official faction, they don't get to break rules either, which is a hilarious claim, given that the rules are almost entirely based on moderator discretion. So of course they're not breaking the rules when the admins can just decide they're not breaking the rules. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, well, on paper they are equal. The entire problem I have with the moderator discretion clauses is that they're applied discriminatorily in practice, as you can expect. Just about any Northwind rule that's going to be applied by different people, or in different scenarios, they're going to apply different. This is the problem. He then states that one could argue they get scrutinized more. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and assume he understands that scrutiny means to observe, not how they are treated after said observation. He claims one could argue they get scrutinized more. However, I am arguing SLC receives less scrutiny for the same or bigger offenses. Proof that in this case, at least in this scenario, he appears to be defining respawn anchor as respawning and then engaging in combat, and he accuses me of it, which would only have remotely enough evidence to suggest that if he watched a good few videos of mine, and mind you, in multiple of my publicly available videos, you can see them right there. They're not like hidden in archives and archives of 1,000-year-old videos. These are publicly available. The SLC faction members use their own homes in many of these videos as this admin would define respawn anchor. None of this to even mention how the SLC faction commonly in almost every single one of those videos uses their developer given fort to, as this admin would define, say it with me now, respawn anchor, as well as shooting out of their spawn with, as the Northwind Housing Guidebook would state, unfair levels of cover. So technically, since it's developer implemented, it's not a house, and thus, at the minimum offense, it's just one of the many significant developer implemented advantages the SLC receives along with very favorable moderator discretion. Which this in the first place is why we don't like moderator discretion, because it always goes to one side. His next quick claim is that we didn't contact him directly with every low effort house we saw. Up until now, I didn't even know how the rules define low effort, because this is another one of those things that depending on which moderator you get, it's gonna be higher or lower. I didn't have a problem with that until someone who has never even claimed to be a moderator until much later after his original charges is finally revealed. He didn't even reveal himself to be a moderator. We found out he was a moderator until one of those people classified it as low effort. As well as he also complains that we fired on him after a second confrontation where he walked away for a good 13 seconds, and he continued to follow without saying anything while being indistinguishable from a military company. He also claims that we should have stopped to listen to a person indistinguishable from a discriminatory and military company while they were armed in a combat-focused game. Does no one else see how it's ridiculous an admin is demanding that? Now we can get to the actual points he conceded, which I did not think that was going to happen at all. His first statement is that the higher-ups are gonna do some rule changes to be less dependent on moderator discretion. Finally! Which is, it's good because the less power these guys have, the less they can abuse it. Though I'm not quite sure who higher-ups are, as on the Discord I can only see 2 higher ranks currently with about 3 people. So maybe this is like the top 3 guys sitting in a room talking about Northwind housing rules, maybe? I don't know. He then states that it makes sense we didn't know he was an admin, but he still says we should have stopped, even though on both times we let him kill us. We did fire a warning shot on one of them after he chased us for 13 seconds. Really letting him kill us shouldn't even be acceptable for an admin to demand that everyone just knows him and knows who they are and stops for them where there's no difference in them acting administratively and militarily anyways. Regarding our question about the admin call, where a house extremely obviously outside of the combat zone was allowed a bannable airlock, he stated that was a mistake on my part, obviously referring to himself, since an old rule allowed it as long as there are no peek downs and was limited. So, you heard that correctly. The admins themselves don't even read the rules they are enforcing as they are enforcing them. I have read the rules 8 times over the course of the last 2 weeks, and the admins themselves can't even read it once. You just can't make this stuff up, man. This is ridiculous. The guy who said, and I quote, "You're just asking for a ban," had not even read the rules. Had not even read the rules while he was threatening to ban people for violations on said rules he had not read. While I don't hate him, I just hate the admin abuse. I completely understand why this guy is the most hated Tanagashima user. But it's not all bad, and this party says they're also going to work on more accessible rules? I'm pretty sure this means moving the rules to somewhere that complies with Roblox's third-party platform rules. For legal reasons, the previous statement is a joke, and did not imply they were uncompliant with Roblox regulations. But my question still remains, is this admin backed by Northwind and they support these actions? Or is this a rogue admin who is not backed by Northwind? If you guys agree with this video and you want to spread this message, and make sure the higher-ups see this one, make sure to like and subscribe to boost it in the algorithm. And as a plus, you also get cool Northwind videos. As for my next video, I'm thinking, as the comments put it, advice to the game about how to improve its player count, because apparently I read Northwind's rules more than the moderators, though I may also make a response video if I get another admin response. That is an option. I might just hold off on it for a while, because these videos take forever to script. But just as a reminder, I don't hate the admins or the moderators. Even if I hate their judgments, calls, and everything about the rules, I do think this whole video is best summed up. For the law always brings punishment on those who try to obey it. Until later, I'll see you guys around.